Welcome to We Be Watching, where we break down our favorite and sometimes not so favorite films and TV shows. I'm Britni Danielle, writer, pop cultural critic, and proud comic book normie.
And I'm Rahja. You all know what it is.
All right, today we're here to talk about episode 5 of WandaVision. We are more than halfway through this series, y'all. Episode 5 of WandaVision on a very special episode. Before we get into it, remember we are breaking it all down. So that means spoiler alert, we are getting into every single thing that has happened from episode 1 through 5. And because of Rahja's, I won't call it supreme since he told me it wasn't supreme last week. Because of Rahja's comic book knowledge, we might be getting into some more backstory about the comic books too.
Possibly.
Right. As always, you can reach us on Instagram and Twitter at WeBeWatchingPod, or send us your feedback, your thoughts, your theories, all of that jazz at WeBeWatchingPod@gmail.com. If you're on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever platform you're listening to, please hit us with that good 5-star rating and drop us a nice little review. It helps spread the word about the pod. But before we get into all of the scene-by-scene action, Rahja,
first impressions.
What was your first reaction to this episode?
Let's see. Oh my God. There's so much in this episode to take in, actually. I'm speechless, actually. After watching it for the first time, I was just like, yes, it's going down. It's a lot. I was excited. I was, having the oh shit moments. Yeah, I had to immediately watch it again after initially watching it, just because it was just so much to take in. So yeah, I was feeling real good about that. So how about yourself?
My first reaction was shout out to all the 80s babies. We in the house. The 80s are in a full effect. Also, I always make notes. I think Roger's more free flowing with his synopsis.
I got notes.
So I'm gonna run through my bullet points. So Detective Vision is on the case. Vision is trying to get some answers, and I'm here for him. I do have a question about what's up with Tyler. I don't know what is his last name?
The creator.
No.
Hayward.
He seems kind of shady. The acting director of sorts. He seems kind of shady, and I think maybe he's trying to hide something. He's working a little too hard to not listen to what Jimmy and Monica have to say about Wanda. So that gives me a little bit of pause. Or maybe he's just an arrogant white man, which, hey, that's the world. Yep, shots fired.
God. Anyone with power is susceptible to do things like this. So.
Yeah, mostly arrogant white dudes. But Vision was dead. We can now confirm. We knew he was dead, but now we know that Wanda went and recovered his body.
Busted up in the place.
And busted up like the man and the woman and the Scarlet Witch, which we can talk about that later in that scene where it's like, Tyler's like, does she have any nicknames? No special nicknames. Like, did they not own the Scarlet Witch name? Is that what that was about?
Yes.
We can get into that later, though.
I can give the rundown.
The rundown is coming, so stay tuned. And last but not least on my bullet point list about first reactions is Agnes knows the deal. Like, we've been kind of thinking about Agnes being like in on it, maybe, but I feel like this episode confirms she's way more in on, quote, it, whatever it is ultimately, than we may have suspected.
Yeah, most definitely.
Before we get into breaking it all down, I'm going to read my synopsis for the episode, if you don't mind.
Instead of doing a synopsis or a long synopsis, how about we just go through what occurred in the series or in this episode?
Sure. Even though I took my time to write it, no problem. The show begins, and we are definitely in the 80s. Wanda has the big hair. Vision has sort of a family ties, 80s style sort of haircut. The babies are crying, and Wanda and Vision are really struggling to get them to sleep, which we learn which is very, very odd. The babies haven't slept in several days, which is not
normal at all.
that's not normal for human babies. No matter how much they cry, they're gonna sleep at some point.
Right.
But Wanda can't even use her powers to get them to go to sleep. So that tells us these babies are a little bit special. At a certain point, she says to them, "Why won't you do what I want?" Which I feel like is a good a good jumping off point for this whole episode. Like,
right.
People are kind of doing what Wanda wants, but Vision is not. Agnes stops by, and that's when things really start to get a little weird. She says, Auntie Agnes has some tricks up her sleeve to get the babies to go to sleep. And she also seems to know that they are in a sitcom that Wanda is controlling.
Yeah, definitely. Agnes is becoming more of a prominent player in what's going on, being that now we see her showing up at the right time all the time. So before you even think that, oh, well, we need, or if someone needs some help, or I should say if Wanda or Vision needs something, she's right there to give them whatever it is that they need. So, whether she is, watching over them or she has some type of sense or something like that, she's definitely involved in the overall or the overarching thing, whatever that may be, when it comes to this reality. We also see, like Britni said, Wanda can't use her powers on her children, which is sometimes a thing when it comes to comic book siblings and families. Their powers don't affect the same biology or whatever you want to call it, being that these babies just manifested themselves. But we also see Agnes, when she comes in, there is a moment where she is saying, oh, do you want me to take that from the top, when she's asking to help with the babies, and Vision is like, oh, well, be careful, and da-da-da-da-da. Vision is being
he's being a protective dad, because he's like, oh, did you wash your hands? Have you ever held a baby?
Right.
When the last time you did this? And so he's asking all the questions like a new protective parent would ask. And it throws Agnes off. It looks like it throws her off because she's like, oh, do you want to take this from the top? You want me to hold the babies, right? And Wanda's looking at her like, hush, shut up, start over.
And which is a huge noticeable thing, as Vision speaks with Wanda after that whole incident. And he's like, you didn't just see what happened? Like, why is she acting so weird? And, Wanda's trying to basically deflect from what actually occurred with that, being that Agnes literally said, do you want me to take this from the top? For me, it almost seemed as if Agnes thought that Vision was more so in on everything than what we know. So with her saying that just out in the open, is just like, oh, wow, like you are really spilling the beans, which does definitely cause more tension and goes into the whole detective Vision mode, I should say, which we have seen throughout the series. There's just little things that he's paying attention to and noticing, especially at the end of not the last episode, but the previous one, where Wanda booted out Monica Rambeau, and Vision, he had questions of, oh, where's Geraldine? And Wanda's like, oh, well, she had to go.
So she says that she had to rush home, honey. But in the beginning of this episode,
previously on Wanda,
yeah, there's an alteration, and Wanda says she didn't belong here. She had to leave, which is different than what we saw on the actual episode.
Right. Which is, I don't know if they just edited that wrong or if we're supposed
that has to be on purpose.
That Wanda is just highlighting the fact that Wanda is aware of what it is that she's doing, but definitely a weird moment in that opening scene that puts Vision more on alert, when it comes to things between Wanda, and what's going on in their realities. So
the other thing that I found really interesting in this scene is that Agnes is constantly doing things to distract Vision from getting the answers from Wanda.
True.
So like she's, doing her little quirky neighbor thing, like, oh, I'm popping by. And after that whole, like, do you want me to take it from the top weirdness, Vision and Wanda step to the side because he has questions, obviously. And then like Agnes is doing like lunges. She's rocking the baby. She starts spraying something on them, which I'm like, Agnes is a witch. What is she spraying on these children? But I filed that for later.
Yeah. Lavender. Ralph always sprays it on me, but you can't tame this tiger. Like,
right. Like, Okay, that's a
Right.
little creepy. But, and then Wanda's like, "It's okay, baby. She has a high libido." I'm
Right.
like, "What is
It's like the
happening?
fact that she
What
took
is
that
happening?"
as to like what Vision was meaning
Right.
when he's asking questions like, what? You care about her libido like that?
Right. And then Agnes, like when Vision is still kind of in question mode, like trying to get the answers, Agnes is in like their little liquor cabinet.
Yeah.
She's like, I need some brown liquor. And Vision's like, what? And she's like, oh no, it's not for me. It's for the babies.
Right.
What kind of babysitter do you think I am? And she's constantly trying to like prevent him from asking Wanda questions
Right. He's
that
trying to
would lead to any sort of answers, which makes me again clearly they're working together. Like clearly Agnes is in on it.
keep the veil from being pierced.
Yeah, she may not know the full scope of whatever, as we might talk about a little bit later on, like the full scope of Wanda's powers, but she knows what's up. We've already seen her previously silence my man Herbert Sherbert, which where is he at? Free Herbert Sherbert. And she's like constantly trying to throw Vision off the case.
He's in too many questions, or I'm about to spill the beans jail. That's where he's at.
Yeah, he probably got blipped out of there somewhere else.
Agnes got him locked up in her basement.
At the end of the scene, after Agnes sprays this quote lavender on the babies, they finally stop crying, and Vision and Wanda go over to see, like, oh, they're so peaceful now, and they're not in their bassinets anymore. And then they're like, "Where are the babies?" And we hear a little voice, "Mommy, Daddy."
Yeah, they didn't jump
and
out,
now
grew up.
Billy and Tommy are 5. Okay,
Right.
they went from 0 to 5, all while Agnes was there. By the way,
Right.
And at the end of the scene, she's like, "Oh, kids, you can't control them no matter how much you try." Like all of the dialogue for me is it's like so light and airy, but like underneath that,
Right.
it's all about control. It's all about like
Definitely.
preventing people from the answers.
Yeah.
And that is the opening that we get for WandaVision. And then I think it cuts to the 80s credits, right?
The typical 80s, with the opening scene and then the credits come on. That's when pretty much that kind of started, where we have the song and we have the whole family ties picture where it's being painted. The actual song is indicative of growing pains. Shout outs to Alan Thicke, RIP.
He's not dead.
Alan Thicke passed away when he was 69, bro.
My bad. R.I.P. to the legend. Sorry.
So we have the imagery, just like Growing Pains, where it showed the characters in the series, like when they had like baby pictures and younger pictures of them, growing up. We also see that in the opening credits for WandaVision, where they actually have Vision as a baby, which we know he was never a baby. We had a little chubby
baby android.
chubby Vision head, We also see younger pictures of Elizabeth Olsen, and it's the whole Growing Pains vibe when it comes to the opening credit, which was pretty cool. Once we get out the credits and this and that, we break to the outside world of the Sword base, where you see Monica being assessed, and she's getting labs and all kind of things. Basically, I guess once you get booted out of a bubble,
she's getting debriefed. They're doing a bunch of medical tests to see if being inside the hex, as I'm going to start calling it. Shout out to Darcy, Dr. Lewis,
which is also a shout out to what Wanda's actual powers are called, hex magic.
Okay, so being inside the hex, they're doing all these tests, which come back blank.
Right.
What do you think that is? Like her scans are blank, her labs are blank or inconclusive. I put in my notes, could this be because of Monica's powers, or could be because of Wanda's powers? Like, what do you think is happening in that?
Either it could be Wanda's powers, it could be whatever the outside influence is of really not trying to reveal the truth about, or I should say the whole truth about what's going on. It could be the fact that once Monica was shot through the bubble, that could have altered her biology in some way, and that could be the start or the beginning of her, getting her powers. So it could be, any number of things, but it's definitely not normal, I should say. Plus, she didn't go through a normal thing by getting booted out first with Wanda, just straight up getting rid of her. She didn't belong there.
I was slightly disappointed with the explanation they gave about how Monica got booted through all these different walls and the whole town to end up on the ground and be like, oh, she's still okay. Because later in the episode, Monica says oh, Wanda protected her.
Right. She pretty much put a shield around her.
I was hoping it was just she was able to take it because
she already has her power.
Powerful. She's a powerful person.
That means we would have to be like, oh, well, where did Monica get her powers from? How did that occur? And this and that. So we haven't even gotten to her actual, power story and origin when it comes to her powers and that. So
I don't even read the comic books, but I'm disappointed with this origin story and how it's going for Monica. I don't read it, but just knowing how it goes, I'm just she's already supposed to be Captain Marvel, so come on.
I mean, yeah. And she's a lot older in WandaVision, which moving forward is just weird for me, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. I mean, I'm sure we'll get a story of how she got her powers, which probably stems from WandaVision, and then they start manifesting at some point, but that's later down the line.
After they undergo testing and don't find anything, Monica has no patience for more tests. So she's like, whatever, get me to the briefing that they're having in Sword.
Right.
Acting director Tyler, that's what I'm going to call him because that's the only name I can remember. He seems intent on classifying Wanda as a terrorist. No matter what Jimmy says, he sort of distills her and Pietro's life into being radicalized by Hydra, and kind of glosses over the fact that they were tortured and
they weren't actually tortured though. They signed up for the whatever the program was when it came to Hydra, but they were also misled and used as pawns. So you can extrapolate from that whatever it is that you want. Also, they, joined up, or she joined up with the Avengers after she, realized the error. Her and her brother realized the error of their ways when it came to Ultron. She was able to see what Ultron wanted when it came to just destroying everything. And she's like, nah, we're not with this. So that's why they left. So.
But even that, Tyler kind of doesn't mention. He just says oh, she fought against the Avengers. Right. And then Jimmy's like, well, and then she joined up with them. Mm-hmm. And then they mention how badly things went in Germany and Lagos. Yeah. The fact that they say it like Lagos gets on my nerves because it's Lagos, which is in Nigeria. But Tyler seems to be super intent on
just demonizing her, basically.
Demonizing Wanda and turning her into a villain. Right. And interestingly, Monica, more so than Jimmy, pushes back and she's like, I don't think she's a terrorist. I don't think she did this as a, quote, premeditated act of aggression. Right. And then to kind of rebut Monica, which is not really a rebuttal. It's she broke into.
We got the receipt.
She broke into this thing to get Vision's body, but that doesn't tell me she's a terrorist. It tells me she's a grieving person. Right. I mean, I know what he's trying to do.
Right, he's trying to.
But in that video, she doesn't. I mean, in that video, I didn't see her kill anybody.
Right, I mean that they make the point oh, this is this goes against the Sokovia Accords and Vision's will and this and that. But we see that she's breaking into a sword lab, right, where there are scientists or whoever, people in lab coats, who could possibly be doing experiments on him. The one thing he didn't want was to be weaponized, which is something that I think Sword was trying to do, or Tyler Hayward was trying to do. And Wanda got wind of it. And in her grief, of course, I think ultimately she wanted to see Vision, and then basically busted in there, knew what was going on and took him away, and then basically reanimated him, which I don't know. If
like a White Walker.
Right? Well, being that he's a robot, he's an android. So I wouldn't categorize him as being dead or alive per se. more so functioning or not functioning.
So is Vision Jon Snow in this? If we're talking Game of Thrones, is he Jon Snow? He came back and he's still troubled by the
I
world.
guess so. But yeah, we see her, she takes him away. But of course, Tyler uses that as a way to basically even just put the more so of an exclamation on point on it that she is a threat. And from that, we know when people do that kind of thing, they definitely have an agenda. They have ulterior motives, and it's more than just, oh, we need to get rid of this threat. There has to be something else, because the question would be like, why are you so hard up to get rid of her? Why are you, like, what is it that you're doing? What is it that's going on in your life right now?
Right. Especially since the last time pre-WandaVision we saw Wanda and Vision was trying to fight Thanos.
Right.
Like, it wasn't like the last time we saw her, she was still out there ripping and running on the wrong side of the Avengers. Like, she was an Avenger.
Right, exactly.
An interesting thing that does come out of the scene with Tyler and the SWORD team is that it's only been 9 days.
Right, since
WandaVision has been taking place,
right,
because she stole Vision's body 9 days ago, whatever that means. And so all of these, like, 50s Wanda and Vision, 60s Wanda and Vision, pregnant Wanda and Vision, like, all of these things have happened in 9 days.
Right.
Which kind of bears out later, because we saw the twins go from 0 to 10 in this episode and get a dog, and the dog dies, and all of this stuff takes place in one day.
In a couple of hours, actually, if you were to, like, be in the actual reality. Yeah, you get a dog.
You lose a dog.
Right. You just learned a life lesson. Yeah, we cut back from the headquarters, from SWORD headquarters, back into the Hex, and we see the kids, Tommy and Billy, in front of the kitchen sink with a big soap mountain, and they're talking, and there's an animal in there, and they're like, oh, do you think mom's gonna let us keep him? And Wanda comes in, and she's like, oh my God.
Typical sitcom.
Right. Be like, crying.
That definitely happened on the Cosby Show.
Right. The crying was bad, but did you guys have to grow legs, because you guys are everywhere and this and that. And then they basically turn around and, like, they kind of form a wall. And she alludes to that, like, are you trying to form a wall? Like, and scoots him away. And then the dog is in there. She picks the dog up and she's like, oh my God, where did this come from? And, they explain, oh, he was outside and he was all alone and he needed some friends and pulling on her heartstrings and this and that. And she's trying to explain to him how, you have to be able to, take care of a life. And,
well, even before that, Vision comes in, and Vision is like, oh, what is this? And Vision has on his human face, and Wanda says, oh, why are you so formal? And he's like, well, you never know who's going to stop by. And at that very moment, Agnes pulls up
right.
with a doghouse. Like, oh, I spotted from my window someone needed a dog. Like, first of all,
right.
Who just has a spare doghouse sitting around? So,
right. Just like who just has a whole spare meal sitting around.
Right.
In the first episode.
Like, who has all of these things sitting around? So this is even more evidence, I guess, even more fire to the fact that Agnes is also conjuring things up.
Right.
Because, okay, sure, you might have some leftover, I don't know what people ate in the 50s, like casserole that she can give to Wanda, but you're not gonna pull up with 2 lobsters, a whole chicken, some steak, and some
gonna be like
vegetables,
like meatloaf.
And
I think meatloaf was the
right. Like, you would have like a spare meatloaf in the fridge, but not like this 5-course meal with dessert ready to go.
Right.
And then, then Agnes is coming by doing her like on the way to Jazzercise, and she hears the babies crying. Why does she have lavender spray in her bag that looks like perfume, but also looks like something a witch would carry to just spray on some babies on her way to Jazzercise? And now all of a sudden she pops up with a whole doghouse.
Right. A whole dog.
We have never seen Agnes's house, by the way. She's always like on the road.
Yeah, she also, when they first meet her, she's like, oh, I'm your neighbor on the right, on your right. Not your right, but my right. But we see that Herbert Sherbert is on the right when they show him outside cutting the fence or cutting the wall. And then Dottie and communist dude, I forgot his name, but they're on the opposite side. So where is Agnes? We don't know where Agnes is actually at.
We don't know where she lives. We haven't seen Ralph, who she keeps constantly talking about.
Which is like Kramer in Seinfeld, where he's always talking about Bob. What's his name? Bob something. And Bob is always offering like some type of commentary on something. And he always brings up Bob, but we never see Bob in Seinfeld. So this is one of those things like how Ralph, it's like we hear Ralph is a character, but we never see Ralph.
We never see Ralph, but we see a lot of Agnes, and Agnes always has what Wanda and Vision need.
Right.
So in this scene, she brings over the doghouse, and before Vision and Wanda even say that the boys can keep the dog, she brings the doghouse.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, okay, like let's name him Sniffy because he's sniffing around. And then it's like he almost electrocutes himself. So let's name him Sparky,
which is actually the dog's name that Vision and Wanda have in the comic books, in the graphic novel.
Good to know.
And the dog is a synthesoid, so it's not even a real dog. So that was a ode to the comic book.
Okay. And then when they're deciding to let the boys keep the dog, Wanda uses her powers to make a collar for the dog.
Right in front of Agnes.
Right in front of Agnes, and Vision is troubled. He's like, what is happening? Like, we said we're going to not show our powers and we're going to conceal our abilities so people won't find out like who we are. And she's like, oh, honey, she didn't see me. She didn't even notice when the boys went from babies to 5. Right. And clearly Agnes noticed.
Exactly.
Because she was right there. She just didn't say anything. And so again, she conjures up this necklace, and then they tell the boys like, oh, we don't think you're old enough. You might be old enough at 10. And then the boys like their necks stretch out, and it's creepy as hell to me. And then they're like 10. They go from 0 to 5 to 10 in the span of like 7 minutes.
Right.
And so now we have these 10-year-old Tommy and Billy. And again, they make no effort whatsoever to conceal any of this stuff in front of Agnes.
Right. And even Agnes says, yeah, let's hope the dog doesn't grow that fast. So she knows, she's a part of it. I don't know if she's actually playing a role in being a catalyst, for them to grow up, because these moments that occur, she's always there.
She's always there. And she did spray the witch juice on them previously. Yeah. Shout out to Marco for that phrase. She sprayed the witch juice on them, and it's suspicious to me. Even the first time I watched, I was like, why is she spraying this random stuff on these? Like, nobody sprays stuff on babies.
On top of the fact that if these children are supposed to be, indicative of Wanda's children, Wiccan and Speed, they don't just grow like that. They don't have the power to just, I'm just going to grow up, So there's definitely some funny business, some shenanigans going on. And Agnes is at the root of it.
Or she's at least right next to the root. She's right there. Her and Wanda are like conspirators in this situation. So the boys keep the dog, and then we transition back outside of Westview. Monica's trying to figure out how to get back into the hex, or the bubble, as we've been calling it. And she says, oh, I know an aerospace engineer who might be able to help, but she doesn't say who that person is. I have a question about who you think that person is.
An aerospace engineer?
Yeah, because she says like, oh, I might know an aerospace engineer who might be able to help. And then she starts texting on her phone. But then Darcy starts talking about like, oh, are you sure you want to go back in here? And Wanda's so powerful, and, we don't know the extent of her powers. And she's like, well, we do know that she's like very powerful. She could have defeated Thanos. Like, she's the only one. Yeah. And then Darcy at some point brings up Captain Marvel, and Wanda looks at her and like, we're not talking about her, which I thought was shady in a great way, because Monica is Captain Marvel, but I know you don't feel that way. They probably wouldn't throw shade at their own character.
No, the aerospace engineer, I'm not sure, but it could possibly be a nod to the Fantastic Four, especially when we're talking about S.W.O.R.D. and they were talking about astronauts that, haven't come back. They also had a program for the astronauts and this and that, which could be led into the origin of, the Fantastic Four, being that they got hit by those radiation that Darcy was talking about. So that could be somebody or that family, Reed Richards or whoever could have been the person that she was alluding to, but I'm not sure.
Could it be my guy War Machine?
No, he's not an aerospace engineer. Don Cheadle? No, he's just in the military.
I just did a quick Google, and he's he's one of the people who came up. I would love to see War Machine because I love Don Cheadle, but on this particular list from GameRant.com, shout out to y'all, they listed James Brody Rhodes, which is War Machine. They listed Reed Richards as a possible. Those are only two they listed. So
yeah, I'm gonna rule out Rhodey. No.
I would like to not rule out Rhodey because more Don Cheadle in my life would help.
Yeah, but his character isn't. No. Reed Richards is more so would fit that. Being that Reed Richards is a genius.
AKA the Elastic Man.
No, his name is Mr. Fantastic, okay?
Well, I'm getting all this bad information from the internet.
I mean, but he does stretch. He is elastic, yes.
Don't believe everything you Google, kids, because apparently it ain't right.
Yeah, I would put my money on that. And they have also said that what's his name, who's directing the Spider-Man movies, will be directing the Fantastic Four. So that's already out there in the universe. So plus WandaVision, of course, as we've been saying, is the bridge to all this other stuff that's supposed to be going on in the MCU too. Yeah, when it comes to Monica, when they mention, Captain Marvel, I don't think that it's shade in that, when it comes to the name aspect, I think it is more the fact that Monica's mom passed away and, Carol Danvers and her mom were really close. And possibly Carol Danvers was not there when her mom, caught cancer and this and that she, Monica was there to help her mom out and this and that before she got blipped away. So without, Carol Danvers being there, it could be like just some salt and just like, yo, like you were supposed to be there for my mom and this and that and you weren't, so. And then plus she's, I think, Monica is still grieving when it comes to that. And Carol Danvers was a huge part of their lives. Mm-hmm. So that could be the reason why she's just like, yeah, let's not talk about her,
Could be. As they're trying to work through how to get back into the hex, Monica figures out that Wanda is rewriting reality once things enter the hex. Right. So she is like, well, what if because they go through this whole issue about, Monica was wearing her modern day, shield uniform or clothes with a bulletproof vest underneath. And when she went into the hex, she was transformed into the 60s, I guess, because she came into that episode. And then when she got booted out, it was the 70s. Right. So her like bell bottoms and her like hippie clothes, I don't know what people wore in the 70s. Her bell bottoms were still there. And so she gets the idea to like shoot up her bell bottoms. And what she realizes is that her pants are bulletproof because like her outfit that she went into with had Kevlar. And so it just like, it transformed her outfit to match that particular time, right. But it maintained the consistency of the fabric or whatever. So she had a bulletproof vest. Her clothes became bulletproof when she was in the hex. And when she got booted out, they remained as such. Right. So she wonders like, okay, since Wanda can manipulate things to match the quote sets, right? What if we send something in that doesn't have to be changed in order to fit in? Right. And so, dun, 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 they go off to figure out what that is.
After they show Monica, Jimmy, and Darcy figure out, that the materials that go inside of the hex remain the materials themselves, but just change their appearance to fit the era at which the show is going on the inside of the hex. We cut back into the hex where Vision is at work, and they're in the 80s. So now there's email. You have Norm there who's like trying to be the funny guy. When it comes to it, they're setting up the computers and, he's like, oh, we have our first email. And he's like, oh, where's my letter opener? And, this and that. So, but the email that comes through is an email from Darcy with concerns about what's going on. And then what happens is the whole office starts reading the email in unison. It's that cult vibe. And
it talks about what's happening in the quote Maximoff anomaly, and it says there's high levels of radiation that surround Westview, and the effects on the residents are unknown.
Right.
And they're all just kind of reading it in a very, like you said, cult like fashion for the children.
In a trance, really, like they focused on it basically, which is probably something, being that they're all, under the, I would say, spell, basically. So when something like that comes through, it's like, oh, our focus is to that, being that there's probably something or someone there that is definitely controlling that specific scene in, Wanda's reality.
Yeah, again, this sets off warning bells, alarm bells in Vision's head, because he's like, what is happening here?
He actually turns off the computer with his hands, and then he does that to Norm also. He presses his hands against Norm's head and basically brings him out of the trance.
Yeah, he basically switches Norm off.
Right.
Like, he switches off sleepwalking Norm to real Norm.
Right. And Norm is like freaking out, like, oh my God, I gotta call my sister. She's taking care of our father, and I don't know what's going on. And Vision is like, calm down, like, tell me what you need to tell me, and Norm is like, she's in my head. She's in my head. You got to stop this. You got to stop her.
He says that it hurts.
Right.
And that she's in my head and it hurts. I don't know how long I've been here. And then he says to Vision, you have to tell her to stop. You have to tell her to stop. You have to get her to stop. But he doesn't specify who the her is.
Right.
So we're led to believe that her is Wanda, obviously. But that her could be Agnes too.
Right. And then Vision basically turns it back on. and Norm just, after Vision puts him back, I guess, into the trance, he just says some like comedic thing, like, am I going to need my letter opener? Or
no, he says something about like, oh, am I going to need a stamp?
Yeah. Am I going to need stamps? Right. And then Vision basically leaves. And then we cut back to Wanda with the children and the dog. And I don't know who it is, Tommy, or I think Billy is, teaching the dog tricks.
One of them
kids.
He's
like, sit and, spin around and talk and this and that. And the dog does it all. And they're like, oh, yeah. And they're like, oh, we want to show daddy. Where's daddy? And here's another moment in the series where Wanda's like, oh, he's off at work, and the kids are like, he's at work. Like, today is Saturday.
It's Saturday.
She's like, no, It's not. It's Monday. And they're like, no, this morning was Saturday. And she was like, well, he's off to work, and that's that. So,
right. Daddy is really busy. He had to go into the office or something. And then she starts lying about needing a distraction, and then they're like, from us? And then she's like, no, honey, he doesn't need a distraction from you. Family is forever, and yada, yada, yada. And
always
then
be your brother, and you guys might fight over toys and all of that kind of stuff. So
yeah, but family is forever. And then the boys ask her, oh, do you have a brother? And she's pauses for a minute, and then she's like, yeah, but he's far away from here.
And it makes me sad.
And we know that it makes me sad. And we know that her brother is dead, technically, at that moment, because that's what got Geraldine booted out, because he was killed by Ultron. So she kind of sidesteps that and like, oh, you can show your dad when he comes home these tricks.
Right.
But at that moment, the dog starts scratching at the door, because dogs and other animals sense things.
Right.
And so the dog senses a disturbance, and Wanda goes outside. She tells the boys to stay inside. Of course, they don't. They all go outside. And that's when we see Monica flying this 1980s drone, I guess, into the Hex to try to communicate with Wanda. And she's trying to talk to Wanda, but here's Tyler's punk ass coming through to disable her commands and then try to take a shot, try to blow Wanda up with a bomb, I guess.
She's trying to talk, and it doesn't seem as if the audio is going through, and Tyler is like, oh, no response or something like that.
No, the audio's going through. Wanda's eyes turn red, and he's like, "Oh, no joy," or whatever he says.
Oh
Like,
yeah. And then Monica can't control the plane anymore. She's like, oh, I don't have control over the drone anymore or whatever. And Tyler's just like, oh, just take the shot. And she's like, what? What do you mean? And he's like, take the shot, take the shot. And then everything, you hear the boom, the screen goes, crazy. And then you hear the horns go off. And there's a breach.
yeah, she doesn't have control over the drone, I think, because Tyler's
They took it.
people,
Right.
they took over control.
Right.
And then he's like, oh, take the shot. And she's like, what? This drone isn't armed.
Right. And then she's like, what did you just do?
I just need Monica to do stuff without Tyler involved. Like, just don't include him. Chain of command is not for him. He clearly can't be trusted. And maybe that's what we'll see going forward, like a rift between them.
Definitely. There's already a rift.
Yeah, this definitely shows like he can't be trusted. So, yeah, they, quote, take the shot, which doesn't result in Wanda getting shot, but it results in Wanda getting mad. Right. And Wanda pulls up real quick.
Walks out the hex like, does this belong to you? Also, her accent comes back.
Yes, but in a very weird, that's one of the notes I made. Like her outfit, she changes into the quote Scarlet Witch outfit that we've become accustomed to. And her accent is somewhat there.
Right.
Which is why we could not have a whole show of WandaVision with this accent. I don't think she could pull it off for this whole show.
Well, I think because it's supposed to be the reality, I should say, that she's creating or, a part of has her as an American, the family life, blah, blah, blah. The whole sitcom stuff would be more of an American sitcom type of thing. So I think that's one of those things where they recognize like, okay, for her voice, it'll be like, okay, and she's in a sitcom, then she has to be more American. And then her actual self outside of the bubble would be the Sokovian.
Yeah, but even with that, it's still very like in and out. It's still very like something she has a little bit of an accent. It's not very, I don't think it's as prominent as it was in obviously Age of Ultron or whatever.
But we know that it's there. That's the thing. I think that's the point.
It's underneath. Yes,
we don't hear that at any other time, in the series until she is outside of the hex. So, and that's her, I'm gonna mess you up voice, basically.
Yeah. And Monica's trying to talk to her and trying to reason with her. And okay, here's my beef with some superhero stuff and some of these comic book type films. Like if somebody has a certain set of powers, right? These guns are not going to work on that person, right? So what is training all these guns on Wanda supposed to do?
That's all they got.
That's what I'm saying. Like people would like point guns at Superman. I'm like, why are you pointing guns at Superman? Like he's bulletproof. Dude is faster than a speeding bullet.
People,
it's just not a thing.
They go off of whatever it is that they have at the moment. It's more of a fly off the cuff as opposed to, oh, we're going to create something to nullify. They only start to think of those things after the fact.
I guess we have 10 years worth of experience with Wanda, though. Like they should know by now that some bullets ain't gonna take her out. But anyway, they have all these gunmen trained on Wanda, and she's basically telling them, like, look, this is your one and only time. Right. I'm coming out of this bubble, and y'all going, this isn't the last warning. This is it. Because if I have to come out here again, like somebody's mama, if I have to come out here again, everybody gonna be in trouble.
Right. And Monica's trying to ask her, like, oh, so what is it that you want? And she's like, I already have what I want. Just leave me alone. If you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. Basically just leave me alone. Leave me be.
Well, she also says, I have what I want and no one will ever take it from me again. So that's clearly Vision and now Vision, Billy and Tommy.
Right. And then she also makes the soldiers turn their guns on the director. He's like, stand down, and then she walks back in, and she also turns the hex that reddish crimson color too.
I wonder, does it make it that much more powerful, like to keep people out?
I don't know if it makes it that much more powerful, but I think it's more of a statement like, this is my domain. You know, you can see it now, so don't mess with it.
Right. We cut to a commercial break.
Right. The commercial with Lagos paper towel.
Paper towels.
Well, we clean up your messes, you know. It shows the lady from the previous commercials.
From the Hydro Soap commercial.
Yeah, with this commercial, she has like 2 kids and there's a mess, the spilling. It's just like an old Bronny commercials where they say, "Oh, you're still using those other brands?" And it shows the paper towel like soaking up all the spilled juice while the other one is all just like everywhere, not really able to clean up the mess. And it also says, what is the tagline at the end? Cleaning up your messes even when they're accidents or something like that.
I didn't write it down.
Okay.
I was so annoyed by the fact they were calling it Lagos that I was like, okay. And then I Googled it. I mean, and it's mentioned earlier in the episode that something happened in Germany and quote Lagos with Wanda. And I know that, you know, somebody was trying to steal, again, with my very minimal internet research, somebody was trying to steal a biological weapon. Is that what happened?
Yeah, that was in Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a conference going on, an international conference with like the Wakandians student in the building. And what is it? I think it was Crossbones who had a bomb, and then Wanda basically put a bubble around him and threw him in the air, but it was right next to the building, and it blew up and killed a whole bunch of people. So, you know, that's where that's actually the reason why we're probably in this mess, because right after that in Civil War, that's when they wanted to have the Sokovian Accords and the registry for people with powers. And then you had Civil War. So, you know, the Avengers kind of split up, and some were against it, some were for it. But it all stemmed from her basically her mess, her accident, and she couldn't even stay at the Avengers headquarters, I believe. So they had her somewhere else, locked away. And that's where her and Vision became, you know, a lot closer and this and that.
Yeah. I'm going to just need for them to stop pronouncing it Lagos. And that would be,
that's what they call
that would be progress, because they're dealing with like a very,
Is it supposed to be the actual country that we know?
Yes, it's actually supposed to be the name of the actual city in Nigeria, because that's where they go, which is not Lagos, but Lagos. So I'm gonna need the MCU to rectify this going forward, by the way. So after the commercial break, we see Billy and Tommy looking for Sparky, the dog, but he's dead. Agnes has him wrapped up in a blanket. She says he ate too many azalea leaves before she found him.
She's in the bush.
She's in the bushes where I guess Sparky has met his end.
Immediately, though.
Yeah, like I was trying to do some quick Google searches, like, okay, are azalea leaves dangerous to dogs? Which they are. But I don't think you die like immediately. Right. I think you like eat them, you get sick, it could cause some health issues. But again, Agnes is a witch, so maybe her azalea leaves are more potent than other people's.
Right, she's using them for her potions and stuff.
Probably on that shit she's spraying on Billy and Tommy, but shout out to Sparky. He had a good one-day life.
Not even one day. Shout out to Sparky's life before he met the kids.
He should have stayed wherever he was, because Jesus Christ.
Mind you, we don't see any other animals in the show at all.
As Vision brings up later, we don't see any other kids either. Even though they had that whole benefit for the children. Ain't no children in WestView.
For the children that were supposed to be in the future, which is Tommy and Billy. That's about it.
Right. Sparky's death leads to a very interesting conversation between Wanda, Billy, and Tommy about death and how you deal with grief. And she cautions them when they look like they're about to cry. Wanda's like, don't do that.
Don't you grow up.
And
I thought
don't you age up. I thought she was going to say, like, don't cry, which I'm like, damn, Wanda, that's a little mean. But she says to them, like, don't age yourself up to avoid this feeling.
But it hurts. She's like, no, don't do it. This is something that, you know, the feeling to run is definitely strong, but you can't, which is kind of mirrors like what it is that she is actually doing.
This whole conversation is do as I say, not as I do. Yeah, so she, after telling them don't grow up to avoid how they're feeling. One of the boys says, "You can fix anything, Mom. Fix the dead." Wanda says no, but Agnes says, "You can do that?" And Wanda doesn't answer Agnes. Instead, she tells the boys that, quote, "There are rules in life. We can't rush aging just because it's convenient, and we can't reverse death no matter how sad it makes us. Some things are forever," which both of those things are lies, because we've already seen the boys age up for convenience because they weren't old enough, according to their parents, to take care of Sparky in the first place. So they went from 5 to 10. That was for convenience. And you can't reverse death no matter how sad it makes you. That's why we're in WestView, right? Because Wanda was sad and she wanted to reverse Vision's death.
Right. Which I don't think reversing death is one of her is within her power set, actually.
Well, when you talk about death, you mean like actual human and or animal death.
Correct. Living, breathing
mammals. Let's go with mammal deaths.
As opposed to androids, which, is, like I said before, more of functioning or not functioning, which they felt like, oh, with the Mind Stone, that's why he would be alive and this and that. But we also hear Tony Stark saying that the Mind Stone isn't the only thing that makes Vision Vision. He is a sum of, himself, Bruce Banner, the Mind Stone, Jarvis. So the Mind Stone isn't the only thing that is a part of Vision.
So you think Wanda put him back together and rebooted him?
I think something like that, or she was able to not talk to somebody, but got a different entity, maybe the Grim Reaper, who does have power over life and death, to assist her in that.
I'm sorry. Is this Grim Reaper person somebody in the comic?
Yeah, the Grim Reaper is definitely a character. I mean, the devil is a character. The Grim Reaper is a character.
Are we talking about Mephisto, or is this somebody else?
No, the Grim Reaper is someone totally different. Death.
Is this the same Grim Reaper that I didn't even check her outfits this episode, but we've seen over the past few episodes, Agnes wears a Grim Reaper on her, sometime on her necklace, sometime like a pin or whatever.
Right. That could possibly be the who, assisted Wanda and possibly has something to do with everything else that's going on in WestView. I'm just saying, I'm not sure if Wanda actually has that power to bring things back to life per se when it comes to humans, animals,
right,
and this and that. So Vision, different story because he's an android.
She could piece him back together and probably get another operating system or something, which kind of come back later when they have their argument and he doesn't have any knowledge or memory of what happened before WestView. Right. So she probably replaced his whole operating. So when you get a new hard drive,
maybe not replace it, but
I mean, if you get a new hard drive, it doesn't have all the stuff from your previous hard drive unless you put it on there.
Right.
And maybe she didn't have the capability of loading it on, or maybe she didn't want him to have the baggage.
Yeah. Plus, he himself did not want to be, in his will, he did not want to be weaponized. He did not want to come back to life, basically, or used in any particular way.
When does an android draw up a will?
Well, he said it he doesn't want to be weaponized. That was the one thing, when he actually was created.
No, I get that. But then when Jimmy says it, it's oh, it's against his will. When did he let me sit down with his lawyer?
I mean,
get this will going.
He probably just professed it at some point. And it's also in the Sokovia Accords that I guess he's not supposed to be reanimated or utilized in some kind of way to, as a weapon or, also the big thing is with Vision is the fact that, Ultron basically was going to create him to use him against the Avengers. And that would have been Ultron controlling him, which Vision does not want to be controlled. He wants to have free will and make his own decisions, which goes against, what Wanda is trying to do when it comes to this whole reality.
Not trying to do. what Wanda is
which
doing.
she can't really control him, but she can control what's going on around him.
At the end of the conversation, or sort of like still when Wanda is talking to Billy and Tommy, Vision, of course, pops up right after she says some things are forever, meaning death. And Vision pops up like, dun dun dun, maybe not, maybe not. And then he consoles the boys because he realizes their dog has died. And I'm guessing he buries it in the backyard because the next scene is like him coming in from the back door, and then he washes his hands. So I guess he buries the dog in the backyard. And then Vision is like, all right, Wanda, we gotta talk. We gotta talk because something is not right. And he tells her, like, I spoke with Norm and his quote, suppressed personality has broken free of your oversight. And Wanda's like, what are you talking about? I don't understand. And then Vision is just not letting her off the hook. He says, you can't control me the way you do them. Right. And then she says, can't I? And then she rolls the credits on this episode to like stop him from talking. And she goes into the other room or whatever. But Vision is like, nah, dog, we about to have it out. So he's still like talking to her and asking her questions. And they get into what looks like an argument. Right. She says to him, this is all for us, so let me handle it. And I think this is when they're maybe when they're levitating, like they get into like their whole like fight stand.
Stop trying to control me. Yeah, and he levitates, and then she levitates, you know, and because he's talking about how like this is wrong. Norm, he has a family, and what you're doing is wrong, and that's where Wanda's just like, yeah, you think I'm controlling everybody here, and making sure they get to their dentist appointments on time, and blah blah blah,
right?
And Vision is very very adamant, like, yo, like this is wrong. He also says, I can't remember anything before this,
right.
And then he's like, he's like, oh, what is outside of Westview? And she's like, you don't want to know. And he was like, you have everything you have here. You got the kids. And then they calm down, and then they're talking. Wanda, that's where she's like, well, do you think I'm controlling everything and this and that?
But she also says, I don't know how any of this started in the first place.
Right.
Like that is a thing that stuck out to me where, okay, Wanda is clearly controlling a lot of this reality, but I think you have suggested on previous episodes, podcast episodes, like she may not have been the one to set it up in the first place. Like maybe some other entity set this thing up to like contain her.
Right.
And so now that she's there, she's making the best of it. And unfortunately, that has a negative impact on people like Norm and Vision. And then the doorbell rings. And then she's like, I didn't do that.
Right. And Vision is just like,
she says, I didn't do that. And she says, but you don't trust me. He's like, I want to, but I don't know.
Right. Which also, just to speak of like Wanda's, like that would take enormous power, first of all, for her to be able to control every single person in the bubble at the same time. So outside of her immediate field of view, basically, that means she would have to know what is going on in everyone's life at that particular point in time and direct them to do things, which I think is not what she can do, because that's too much brain power.
But would she need to do that? Or could it be like, hey, when you enter the hex, like you get put under a certain spell, so you start to just start to live life in a way that she doesn't have to direct, like, oh, you have a dentist appointment on Thursday, but it's like you're just under this control of this like force field, so that you don't remember your previous life, and now you think like this life here in this realm is like the life. She's not controlling every single decision unless she's coming in contact with these people, perhaps, because we see that they have like, they have their little men's gossip time, and she's not controlling that, but they're also not their normal selves during that time. Like they've all been transformed, I guess, into these characters. And once you're transformed into a character, you're just that character.
Which I think that there is something that is amplifying that control, not just her, because it takes, like when we see like she gets emotional, things like really break down quickly and bad things start to happen. Dottie cutting her hand. You got Herbert trying to cut down a wall
Free Herbert Sherbert. I want to see him in the next
Her
episode.
immediate control, I think, is definitely there. But while she's not in the vicinity of everyone, there is definitely something that is controlling just the community itself. And what we've seen outside of the community when we saw the two sheriffs who just basically were like, yeah, there's no Westview. And it's like, yeah, we know there's a Westview. And there's a sign right next to you to tell you that there is a Westview. But there is definitely some other outside influence that is playing a role in keeping things more so in check. And I think that when Wanda gets more so in those stressful situations or emotional, that kind of breaks that, I guess you can say, that line that whoever that entity is has over the community. So, people start waking out or whatever. We also saw how Vision was able to break Norm out of it. So he has the power to just go and just set people free.
That's what I'm saying. Like, why doesn't he just start? I mean, I think Vision is still, he doesn't have the answers, Sway, for himself. Like, he has no memory about anything prior to 9 days ago, or maybe even 8. Like, he doesn't have any memory prior to when they became into Westview. Like, he has nothing about Tony Stark. He has nothing about Ultron so far. He has nothing about all of the things that led up to this moment.
No death, none of that stuff.
And he says it scares me. He uses the word scared, which is an emotion for a robot, but we see that he has emotions because he, quote, loves Wanda. And she's like, all you need to know is that you're my husband and you're Billy and Tommy's father. Should not be enough for you. And I think increasingly that's not enough.
Wouldn't be for me, dog.
It wouldn't be for anybody because you would want to know like where you came from, what happened. You're a grown person and you have no
if everything was
of,
just
like,
going according to plan, then you wouldn't know. But being that you have all these things transpiring in front of Vision, he's like, wait a minute, what? It's like all these questions are being fueled by the breakdown of what's going on in the bubble at time.
Yeah, and Wanda is also breaking the rules, like the rules that he thought that they were living by. Like, hey, we need to conceal our abilities. We need to be, quote, normal. We need to be like undercover. And increasingly, she's not doing that, particularly around Agnes, which even further alarms him.
I just thought about it. Why would you need to do that? Why would you need to conceal the fact that you have powers if, in fact, that everyone knows you two are Avengers?
I said this in the previous episode, and you were like, "Oh, it's to keep things, quote, normal for Wanda's end." And I'm like, okay, but if she's controlling it, they don't have to pretend.
But it's just like, I guess with how everyone in that community is being controlled, if they were to recognize that it is Wanda and Vision, then that might be like break them out of that control. It would be easier for them to be broken out of that control. And I think that's one of the caveats that keeps everything together, is the fact that they do not know who Wanda and Vision are, and the fact that they are Avengers and that they have powers, because that would be reality.
Yeah. What do you think? And I know that I believe at some point, some of the promos or the trailer, Vision tries to walks through the barrier. Like, what do you think prevents him from, like, well, he doesn't at this point know about the barrier. So when he finds out, do you think he's just going to be like pushing people through? Like, Norm, get out. Herbert, get out. Just go through the barrier.
I don't know. I think he will probably try to venture out himself first. And there may be some, force basically that pushes him back in or pulls him back in, or, but I know there's going to come a point where, being that he's already like, what is outside of Westview? It's, signaling that, okay, there is something outside of here. And at some point I need to explore that, which will be when all hell probably breaks loose. So, but yeah, I think, being that it gets more intensified between them each episode that we go. And especially in this episode where, they about to come to blows about it. She about to wield her powers. He levitates and he's yelling at her. And she's like, you've never spoken to me like this. And that's what triggers what do you mean like this before? Who was I before? So she's adding more questions to Vision when she's speaking, because, as a human, you can't hide for too long. You know what I'm saying? You can run, but you can't hide, as they always say. So not anomalies, but things that people would normally just come across that they feel are, this is weird. They're going to have questions, even with the kids, and they're talking about, well, today is Saturday. It's just like, well, you can't continue to lie or keep up the lie, because that takes so much to, you have to know exactly everything that is going on. You know what I'm saying? You got to keep the con, and it's very difficult to keep the con.
And she seems to be bad at lying. I'm gonna need Wanda to up her lying game if she's she's trying to keep all these balls in the air. And again, it kind of goes back to Agnes when she's making a little like joke when the kids go from babies to 5. Like, oh, you can't control them no matter how much you try. And it's like, okay, I think increasingly she's not going to be able to control the children. She's clearly not going to be able to control Vision, who she is not able to control in this episode, and increasingly probably other people too. And that brings us to that very end of this episode, when during the middle of their conversation, Wanda and Vision's argument /
another
conversation,
distraction.
the doorbell ring.
Here we go.
She looks at him and she says, like, I didn't do that. So he's like, I want to believe you, but and I don't know. And so she goes to the door, she opens the door, and then there's like an alarm sounding on the other end too, which is interesting. Outside of WestView, usually that alarm sounds when things come out. So the alarm goes off and Darcy runs to the screen. And she's like watching with bated breath. Wanda opens the door, and it's like this gray-haired figure that we see from the back. So we don't see this person's face. We just see Wanda's face and the back of this person's head. And then it pans around, and Darcy's like, oh my God. She's like really into it. And then she's like, she recast her brother?
Right.
And then we see Pietro, but we see X-Men Pietro, Quicksilver. We don't see MCU Pietro. So that's an interesting turn as well. But he makes some little joke like,
long lost brother can't squeeze my sis.
Well, Vision doesn't know who he is because he doesn't have a memory. But Wanda doesn't look like she recognized him either.
Yeah. He alludes to the fact that he's her brother, and then she's like, says Pietro's name, and then no questions asked, hugs him, even though this unfamiliar face is in front of you.
Right. This is not the Pietro you remember.
Exactly. He's dead, and his face isn't that face. So this was like, the huge moment, I guess you can say, in this episode, alongside all the other stuff that's going on. But he, being that he's from the actual X-Men universe, the Fox X-Men universe. So, he shows up. We see it's like, oh wow, this is Pietro, not even from this universe. He's from a different universe. Vision, of course, if he would have recognized if it was Quicksilver, being that he had met Wanda's actual brother before.
Well, he wouldn't have, though. He would not have, because he doesn't remember anything before WestView.
Yeah, that is true. But they both are like, who is this person? And Wanda is just like, I guess it's my brother. And gives him a
Right. She hugs him, and then the audience, who should have been gone because the credits rolled a while ago, they're like, oh.
The audience just shows up. Speaking with the alarm, I think with the alarm, it indicates surges in energy, if I'm not mistaken. So any type of breach, that would have been a surge in energy when it came to Geraldine and Wanda coming through, and then possibly with Pietro just being plucked out of wherever, I guess, and now in the hex, that could have been a big, huge surge of energy that occurred, which would indicate that there's definitely something else that is manipulating this situation. I have a couple of theories that it is possibly, the actual Evan Peters Quicksilver from X-Men, and they're just expanding now into the whole multiverse thing. Or it could be somebody who is playing Evan Peters Quicksilver, and it's not really him, but someone who is, disguising themselves as Wanda's brother. So we'll see if this, sticks and it's actually the whole multiverse, because if it is, that means they're canonizing the X-Men, the Fox's X-Men universe, which is a huge thing. We also know that in the future Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man 3, that we're going to have Tobey Maguire and Garfield, whichever other the Spider-Man. I didn't really pay attention to those. So that whole multiverse thing. We also saw J. Jonah Jameson from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man coming to the new Spider-Man. So that is definitely some multiverse stuff going on. So yeah, big, huge bombshell. How is that going to play out? Is this just another distraction to keep things, moving forward for the ultimate goal of whoever, Agnes and her cohort, whoever that may be? If in fact Agnes is in, I guess, cahoots with a villain, or if she is just trying to be more protective of Wanda, So yeah, right at the moment where they're having this talk, and I don't know how this all occurred, and then magically her brother just shows up. It's like, what? Like, only time, the Hex gets visitors is, we saw Monica Rambeau basically push herself through. We saw Sword going through the Beekeeper, which we don't know what happened to him. We have yet to confirm what happened to the dude in the hazmat suit. And now we have Pietro just showing up, her brother in another universe. Right.
Her brother from another universe.
See, the weird thing is, in the X-Men universe, Wanda is not in the X-Men universe.
Which brings us to the name. Like in that scene where Tyler is really harping on, like, oh, she doesn't have any nicknames, any special names, any aliases, and everybody knows, even me, the normie, everybody knows her alias is Scarlet Witch.
Dub her that, being that she turned the Hex Scarlet, I guess you can say. Once she went back in, maybe, further down the line, they'll actually use that name now, moving forward at some point in time. Being that they do, they have the rights to use it. And also that would codify the fact if Pietro, Evan Peters, Quicksilver, he's an actual mutant that we know of. And if he is actually Evan Peters, Quicksilver, then he is a mutant in the MCU at this point, as opposed to a mutate, I guess you can say. So yeah, we'll see how that Uncle Pietro in the house.
Uncle Pietro. Hopefully he's not going to be a bad influence on Billy and Tommy, but it's looking a little questionable
come between
right now.
Her and Vision, he'll have differing views on certain things. And of course, there's going to be a lot more questions. Vision will be like, wait, what? So can't wait to see the next episode and moving forward, how all of this is going to play out.
Before we wrap up, I have two questions that I hope I'm assuming we will get solved before the end of the season. Who created WestView? This hex, this bubble of WestView. Who created the WestView anomaly? I guess we know that it's not Wanda from what she says, but I don't know if Wanda is trustworthy at this time. But she says, I don't know how this started. So maybe this was something that was already in place and she just went there because it was a way for her and Vision to be together. And also, who else is controlling WestView in addition to Wanda? So those are my main questions going forward. What about you?
I'm wondering, okay, so where is Pietro coming from? How did he get there? What role is he going to play? And to what capacity is his Quicksilver role going to be in the story? And also, who is this? We know that there is definitely another entity involved. Who is that? Is it Mephisto? We don't know. In the comic books, he played a major role when it came to the children. I think it all is going to revolve around the children. To what extent, I'm not sure. And Agnes, how she, with her death pendant or the Grim Reaper pendant? Is the Grim Reaper somehow involved in making all of this transpire? And yeah, I'm actually really excited. I know those first 2 or 3 episodes were kind of rough to get through, but now we're seeing everything open up. Especially with the format now, you have the whole back and forth from the inside the hex to outside the hex. Also want to see what happens with Tyler and Monica, how Monica, after the big, we just gonna shoot up Wanda. If Monica is gonna get angry enough, maybe her powers might manifest. She does a key blast to the body or something. We'll definitely see. So,
well, we will definitely be watching because that's what we do. We be watching. But we've come to the end of another amazing episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star review, a good review. Shout us out. Tell your friends about us. If you have any questions, comments, any feedback you want us to discuss on the show, any theories, please hit us up at We Be Watching Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Also at We Be Watching Pod at gmail.com. And I'm excited for the next episode. We only have 4. It's crazy. Right. We only have 4 more episodes of WandaVision for the rest of the season. And we will be here covering all of those 4 plus some more stuff. So stay tuned and subscribe.
You out there. I know you're listening. I want to hear your questions. I want to hear your theories and your comments, so we can definitely discuss some of that.
Indeed. And with that, I am Britni Danielle.
And I'm Rahja.
And we be watching.
Do it.
Yay, yay.
There you go. All right, y'all. Peace out.